Welcome, everybody. Nice to have you with us on Astrology Unplugged. This is episode 107, I think. And as you know, if you've been with us for a while, about half the time it's astrology and about half the time it's about other things. Next week, we're going to have Greg Keene back doing his mediumship reading for you. Tonight is, hello, Monifa. Tonight is a very special category on the chemical, the plant called ayahuasca. I am not advocating that you take it. I'm not advocating that you don't take it. I'm simply here to inform you, and I'm very pleased to have run into a reading here in Pittsburgh with our guest, Sandy. Sandy Lamar will be our guest for the first hour because the other guest has either forgotten or whatever. Then at 9 o'clock until 9:30 will be Dr. Wagner, who is a special type of pharmacist here in Pittsburgh, a naturalist. He has a home in Ecuador. He does not participate in ayahuasca, but he knows about the lifestyle. He knows about what the drug can do, etc. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is because a lot of people are getting interested in this. It is a vine that grows in South America. It has something similar to what an LSD trip is like, but yet it's quite different. It's similar to psilocybin and all that, but yet it has strong healing properties. It is not for the faint of heart. It takes you to places in your mind where a lot of people want to go to release old stuff. So I'm going to get right to it and just let you know before we start that there are some excellent documentaries on YouTube. Just type in ayahuasca if you can figure out how to spell it. Welcome, Sandy.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
It's so nice to have you. I'm very pleased. She and I we had a reading about 10 years ago, and we had a reading the other day. So it's nice to have you again. And she was telling me about her experiences, and I have a lot of questions for you. I just want to say at first for people, it is a holy thing in the jungles of Costa Rica and in Peru and other places. It is prepared by shamans. Mm-hmm. It is a vine that grows, and they scrape off the bark of it, and they make a certain kind of bitter tasting tea, and you drink just a little bit of it, and it sends you reeling into what Mother Ayahuasca wants you to see.
That's
so
right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit, Sandy, at first about why you went?
So it was my 50th birthday, and I was, I guess, kind of at a place in my life where I kept seeing the situations were the same, but the people were different. And I kept reliving the same thing. And who was the common denominator? That was me. So I had done a lot of research. I knew people that had done ayahuasca, and I never felt like this is something that I wanted to do, but it just kind of came across my path naturally at that point. And I thought, okay, this could be something that could help me. I felt like I had, through my upbringing, I had been raised in a way that conditioned me to be where I was in my life, which wasn't serving me. And I wanted to break that chain, and I wanted to change it. And I felt for me, this would be the way that I could make that happen the fastest way.
When you speak of life was not serving you, what are you speaking of in particular? Blockages?
Blockages, the way my thought patterns, how I looked at myself, my self-worth, what I expected from other people, which wasn't a lot, and I expected too much from myself. It was just
not working.
It was just, that's exactly right.
I can't remember, but it probably was Pluto. Anyhow, so you read about it, and I know it's about a $2,000 to $3,000 trip to get everything done down in Costa Rica. By the way, it's coming to America. They're going to be opening ayahuasca centers in, I believe, Colorado and Washington, or Colorado and California.
I would
And
do
the
it.
reason I talk about that is you have to have a very educated, skilled shaman with you and other guys who can help you, because you can get off on a subset, another trail that's not good for you, and they help you. They know what to do because they do thousands of these trips, if you call it.
Yeah.
So you picked Costa Rica. Did you go with a bunch of people?
I went to Costa Rica by myself.
Well, there's an Aries talking, huh?
I went by myself. I think a lot of people that do go to do this journey do go by themselves. I think most of the people do go by themselves. And I met a wonderful friend there. I'm going to go see her next week in New York. And we were soul sisters. And I just felt like after 2 days, I knew her forever. And I told her, I said, I feel like I've known you forever. And I think, the universe puts you where you need to be, when you need to be there. Well,
one thing I do want to mention to people, we'll get deeper into your story. With an Aries sun, Sandy's an Aries, remember what the main thing is about astrology, even though we make such a big deal about sun signs, is essentially your sun sign is your center, it's your core. You may have other major energies, but what an Aries is, an Aries wants to be the hood ornaments. They want to be on the front of the car where the air is and there's nothing else there. They're breaking the air. They're breaking new ground. They're adventurous, and I would hesitate to say, but it's probably right. She wanted to get more direct experience out of life.
Yes.
If you listen closely to the Aries, Joseph Campbell, he talked about all of his books on mythology. It all came down to he believed that life is meant to be more fully experienced in the here and now.
Yeah.
So what happens when you get there?
So the resort that I went to, you can go to Peru. There's different places. There's places in Ecuador. There's a lot of places in South America that do it. There's a few places in Costa Rica that do it. The place that I went to,
7 days.
It was 7-day all-inclusive resort. The place that I went to, they had yoga, they had massages, they had colonics, because you want to clean your system out as much as you can, because ayahuasca is a purgative. They had classes, in just on your they had a different speaker every week, and just to kind of enhance your experience when you went there. So you would get there on a Saturday or Sunday, and they had ceremonies Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So the resort that I went to, they had 4 different ceremonies. The first 2 ceremonies were, and they had a different brew. When you brew the ayahuasca, it comes from the ayahuasca vine, like you had said, and it comes from, I'm going to mispronounce this, but I believe the chacarna leaves. And the chacarna leaves are what have the DMT in it. And the ayahuasca is the MAOI inhibitor, which lets that DMT work in your body. So there's different brews. The first night was the San Diamante, that church. They have a special brew that they use. The second night was a homegrown brew. The third night was a feminine energy. They had 2 female shamans. And the fourth night was the Colombian tradition. Now, the Colombian tradition was a little different from the other 3. The other 3, it started at sundown, and it was usually over probably around 12 or 1 o'clock. I'm not sure. You didn't have your clock with you. But the Colombian tradition, it's a much thicker brew. It's a much more intense brew, and that ceremony lasted until sunup. So it lasted all evening. So you got something different from each ceremony.
But I understand the actual trip, if you will, when you drink it, is only 10 minutes?
No, that's in so the trip, I think if you're going to smoke DMT, it's a very short acting
trip. Okay.
If you take the ayahuasca, it's much more longer acting, And during the first three ceremonies, because it was a shorter ceremony, you would get one drink and you would have a second drink. For me, and everybody is different, but for me, I didn't really purge on the first drink. Nothing really happened on the first drink for me for the first 2 nights. The second drink is when kind of things set in. For me, again, it wasn't really a purgative effect for me. The very first drink I took, I had some realization that I have a gut of steel, and I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to purge on the medicine. I was worried about listening to everybody else purge because it's not very nice. And so I realized that I had that gut of steel, and that gut of steel I had put on myself as protection when I was a very young child. That was my emotional center, and I was protecting my emotional center with that. So that was one of the first realizations that I had with ayahuasca.
So when I watched the documentary, she's talking about some people were able to throw up, other people had to heave for quite a while until they did. And there's all kind of different purging. But you're talking about inside, you have a lid on certain things that are packed down, and that's your brain and your heart protecting itself. And I want to know about when you're peeling back the onion and you're letting old pains come up and you're peeling back another layer. I always fear what you hear about people in the 60s that did, what is it called, a primal scream, where they too violently ripped away these outer layers and too much stuff came out too quickly. How does ayahuasca and your handlers there, how do they handle that?
So I was a little, I wasn't sure what to expect when I first went there, because it's a totally different world. We don't deal with shamans in our everyday life. We don't know what shamans do. And I wasn't sure if the shamans would be able to take care of you, if they were going to know what was happening. I believe after experiencing this, that Mother Ayahuasca gives you just what you need. Whatever you need, that's what she's going to give you.
Now, a couple of things I want to know, and Dan is here now. He'll be joining us at 9 o'clock. I want to know more about this. But when you watch, I mean, we Americans, I'm sorry to say, we Americans are just really clueless.
Yes.
We are really clueless. And it comes about by going to church, and he goes here and he goes here and he says this, and you say with that, and you kneel and you stand and you pray, and you're doing all the motions, but nothing's really happening to you. Well, this is changing. But I want to ask you about this. I'm not going to call it spooky, but it's lovely actually to watch these shamans preparing their ayahuasca, and they're blowing smoke. They're blowing tobacco onto the tree. They're blowing tobacco onto you. It's like they're purifying, getting the tree ready so that the spirit of the ayahuasca can speak with you. Is this right?
Yes, that's correct. So when the two tobacco uses that they use in the ceremony, one is rape. I don't know if you've heard of rape. Rape is a tobacco, and I'm not sure how they prepare it, but it's not something that you smoke. It's like ashes, and I shouldn't say ashes. It's a ground up material that it's blown up into your nose, and it's supposed to, it opens your third eye chakra. And
your crown chakra.
Your crown chakra. It opens your crown chakra. And trust me, it opened your crown chakra.
Well, I've experienced that once, and that was amazing.
It was very.
So what happens after you get past the taste and the purging? What happens to your mind? Because I understand that this consensus reality that we're looking at, like everybody says, is really not here. And you're starting to see the real reality. What happened to you at that time?
So and again, everybody's experience is going to be different.
Right.
After every ceremony that we had, everybody gathered in the middle of the Maloka, and they talked about their stories. I did not have any really any journeys for the first 3 nights. And so after the second night, so again, we had 4 ceremonies. After the second ceremony, I know I had 4, and I knew I had a lot of stuff to work on. So after the second ceremony, I just started crying because I felt so broken, and I felt this isn't working for me. And I was walking to my room, and the shaman saw me, and I saw that he saw me, and I just wanted to ignore him, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. And he came up and he stopped me, and he said, "Sandy, what's going on?" And I just started bawling at that point, just crying. And he took me up to where the shamans do their thing, and he's waving their fan at me. He's blowing the smoke on me. They have this liquid that they throw on you or they spit on you, and he's trying everything to kind of realign my energy. And at one point he laid me down on the ground, he lifted up my shirt, and he started wiping my stomach. And at that point, because I knew the night before, I had thought that's where my blockage is. And I said, "Get it out of me." And he said, "I'm trying, you have to work with me." So I was able to calm down, and we had a really good conversation, and the message that the shaman had for me. And as he's doing this, I was sitting there thinking, you were in Costa Rica and the shaman is blowing smoke all over you. What is going on? What is going on? But, we had a talk, and his message to me was, you have to trust the medicine. Just trust. And I'm like, yeah, but. Yeah, it's America.
But.
And he's like, just trust the medicine. You have to trust. He said,
why do you think you were crying so much?
Because I wanted help, and I didn't think I was going to be able to get it. I wanted it to work for me, and I didn't think I was able to get it.
And in the video, in the documentary, you see so many people writhing on the ground, people that have been raped or whatever, saying, "Just get it out of me, get it out of me." They want it out. Yes. Whatever it was, get it out. You must have heard quite a few different noises from the people around you. Huh?
It's interesting. By the 3rd night, that was one of my biggest concerns, was going down there. I wasn't worried about purging. I was worried about listening to other people purge. And by the 3rd night, it just became part of the soundtrack. You're just listening to them, and you knew. And when you're going through that experience, you're on your own mattress, you're in your own space. You don't help them, no matter what they're going through. That person is going through what they need to go through, and you just send them love if you're able to, and it just, like I said, becomes part of the soundtrack, and that purge is them healing.
Did you have a sense of a bigger spirit?
Absolutely.
In terms of you were in their hand?
Absolutely. So I'll tell
Really?
So I'll tell you about my 4th night. So one of the best experiences that I had when I went down there was after the 2nd night, and the shaman, we were sitting on the ground, and we were talking, and people were just kind of milling about because the ceremony had ended. And as we were done, I said, "Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate your help." And I went to give him a hug. And as I was hugging him, they had been playing music over the speaker, and whatever song was on must have been a live recording. But as I went to hug him, all you heard was clapping over the loudspeaker. And I just thought, if you can't trust after that, what can you trust? It was a very intense and emotional experience. And it wasn't while I was, I would say, under the influence of ayahuasca, but it was still one of the most transformative experiences I had with the ayahuasca.
Okay, tell me what you mean by it was what was transforming?
So so we had that experience, and I went back to my room that night, and I just laid in bed and just cried tears of gratitude, because I felt joyous. I felt, I just felt like I didn't have to make something happen. I could just let it happen, which I'm always make it happen. Like I said, I went down there waving my battle flag, I was going to make it work. And I was, you know, it was just a different shift in perspective. So it was a very, very cool experience. It was very nice. Yeah.
Well, that's just so fascinating. What did it taste like?
It's awful. It's absolutely awful. So the first 3 nights you drink it. I guess black licorice is the most thing I can explain. By the third night or the fourth night was the all-nighter, and I had been with the owner of the resort that morning at breakfast, and he said, tonight's going to knock your socks off. And that brew was a little different. It was much more intense, much thicker. And after you drank it, they also gave you water. So you took the water in your mouth. You're not supposed to drink it. You just rinse your mouth out with the water and go back to your bucket, and you spit it in your bucket because it's just very thick and it kind of sits in your mouth.
Did you feel that the progress you made on the first night benefited you and connected you to the second night, etc.?
It's a progression. And like I said, Mother Ayahuasca gives you what you need, whether you know it or not. She knows.
What did she do? What did she do with the people that thought they're losing their mind?
I'm not sure. And again, I never had that experience. So and you know, what's interesting is because they talk about, you know, everybody's having their own experience, and they talk about how you're next to somebody and there's somebody who maybe has to hold them down because they're writhing and screaming. And then you talk to them the next morning and you think they're having some crazy experience. And you're like, well, you know, what were you like? Or what was your experience like? And they're like, well, it was so nice and gentle. I talked to God all night. But in their physical world, it was, you know, very intense. So what they were doing in their mind and what was showing up physically were two completely different things. So it's very hard to tell what somebody's going through from what the appearance of what they're doing is.
I would imagine a lot of the progress is made when you go back to your bed and you're lying there. What goes on during that time?
So you're supposed to, you know, sit and be still, close your eyes, let the medicine work in you. Let the medicine kind of, you know, sit in you. For me, again, I didn't have an intense hallucinogenic experience. For the first 3 nights, I had a very, very heavy body high, where like a drunkenness in my body. And by the third day after the third night, you just felt nauseous and you felt tired and you felt, oh my gosh, can I do this again? But the fourth night, and I went to Costa Rica twice, but the fourth night is when I had the best experience. And what had happened was I hadn't purged the first 3 nights. And I hadn't really had the experience that some people had. And so I had the first drink the fourth night. And then after the second drink, I immediately went back to my bucket and I purged it. It immediately came up. And I remember I laid down in my bed and I thought to myself, this is bullshit. I'm pissed because now I just threw this medicine up. How can it work in me when, you know, now it's all in the bucket. The first drink didn't work. The second drink's in the bucket. So I laid down on my bed and I planned my demise, and I knew I couldn't kill myself, but I was done. And I said, I can't kill myself, but when I go back, I'm going to become the world's biggest asshole. And it was going to be either I was in jail or I was homeless.
Why were you feeling so drastically?
Because I have tried everything my whole life, and I was like, this is the answer. I had invested so much into this and it just wasn't working. So you were
transforming, but you didn't know you were at that moment.
Yes. And I had gone down there for abandonment issues, and now the medicine's abandoned me, and I just gave up.
Well, when did you start to figure out, hey, this damn thing worked?
Well, it's interesting because so I'm laying there on the bed, and I had my head at the foot of the bed, and I was laying there, and I saw a shaman standing at the foot of my bed looking at me. And I thought to myself, well, as I'm planning my demise, I thought, I'm going to just enjoy this for now. I'll finish that later because this is starting to feel good. The best way I think I can describe it is by saying, if you have ever been on the Small World in Disneyland, it was like being on It's a Small World. It was just on steroids. It was just floating around. I don't remember much of that. I just remember it was a good feeling. But all of a sudden, just like that, in an instant, I was in pure joy. And it was, and I remember I was crying, and I had my hands over my eyes, and the shaman bends down, and he's like, so can you tell me what's going on? And I said, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is joy. This is how it should be. And he said, well, you want to keep it down because people are still going through the process, because you want to respect everybody else. I didn't realize I was making noise. And he said, can you sit up for me, and can you take a drink of water? Which you're not supposed to drink water because that lessens the effect. So I took a drink of water, and I just felt amazing. And that was it. And nothing else other than I felt amazing. And I wanted to go talk to a shaman that I had talked to before. And so I got up, and I'm trying to find him, and I made my way outside. And I just kept getting these messages like, I knew where my boundary was. They had told you, you can go outside, you can explore, stay in this area. But I didn't have my glasses on. It was dark, and I wanted to explore, but I couldn't see. So I would look down, and I would take a step or take 2 steps, and I was okay. And I would look up, and I would think, but I can't see, but I can't see. I would look down, and I would take a step or 2. And the message was, you just need to know where you are. You don't need to know what's out there. It's okay.
Now, I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
When you started to have these blissful experiences, which are kind of like at our basis, what Jesus said.
Yes.
Jesus said heaven is inside of you.
Yes.
Could you sense at that time, wow, when I'm back in America, most of the time I can see it's down there, it's a little thing, but I keep putting stuff on it. I keep blocking it. Could you then understand and reflect back to your normal days here at home and see how you kept it away from your experience? Not
until later, because at that point, when I was going through that experience, what I realize now, which I wasn't at first, when I first happened, that was just in joy. I was in another dimension, and I knew people would go in other dimensions, but as they were laying in their bed, and they're, in their mind, they're in another dimension. I was up, and I was walking around. I was in another dimension. It was smack up against the dimension that I was in. I don't know how dimensions work. That's the only way I can explain it.
Okay.
But I had walked around outside a little bit, and I had these intentions that I wanted to take care of when I went there to work with the ayahuasca. And one of them was, if I get done with these intentions, one of my intentions is I want to know, is Jesus real? So
wow.
I was walking around outside, and then there was a gentleman sitting on the steps, and I know who he was. I know his name. I had talked to him before. I had talked to his wife before, and I went up to him because I wanted to talk to somebody and be like, what the shit? Oh my God, this is crazy. So I went up to him, and I kneeled on the ground. He was sitting on the step, and I put my hands on his ankle, and I looked at him in his eyes, and I said, did you know? And he looked at me, and he said, yes. And at that instant, he was Jesus. And And it was just as simple as that. And I said, now I know why they take away your phone. And he said, why? And I said, because I want to tell everybody that I know that I love them. And he said, well, you can send them love. And I said, well, of course Jesus would know that I can send them love. So
now, did you find that when you were doing your work, most of it was work that you had come there with, like on a list? Or did you find that the Mother Ayahuasca kept showing you what the next thing in the syllabus was?
Mother Ayahuasca was just showing me the next step.
Really?
The next step.
Now, I want to ask you this because it takes up a good bit in the literature.
Yes.
Did you see dark spirits or demonic spirits?
I saw the very first night, I saw, it wasn't a dark spirit. Mother Ayahuasca presents herself sometimes as a snake. I saw not the head of the snake, but I saw the body of the snake slithering. I saw that a couple times, like in my next trip. But I did, in my first trip, I did see the first night, it was, everything that I did see, it was very dark. And it was, I saw what I know now are my intestines that were charred black. And I saw like a rip in the intestines, and you could see the pink flesh behind it. So there was a rip in the flesh. The very first night, that was the darkest things that I saw. But I didn't see any dark demonic.
Is there ever a sense that a dark spirit's going to take over you?
I did not feel that, no.
Have you heard of people with that?
I did hear of people say that, yes.
How did they get through it?
Sometimes a shaman will come, and the shaman knows. The shaman, I'm not sure what the shamans, what they do, what they know, what they see, but I believe they see spirits, they see energy. They know when you need them, and they're there to help you. You can tell the shaman you need help, and they're going to help you. So
that's very interesting.
Yes,
what and how did you know Mama Ayahuasca was with you?
I saw the snake. It was just the feeling that you get. After I was in that dimension, there was no question. And a few days after I had left the resort, I was falling asleep, and I kept waking up, and I was falling asleep, and I had this thought of, wait a minute, this is important. Like the dream that I was having was important. And I was at a friend's house, and there was an elderly lady. She was a black lady. She had white hair, and she was sitting at a table, and I just went up to her, and I just wanted to be next to her. And I just kind of kept trying to like be next to her. And she said, oh, happy birthday. And that was Mother Ayahuasca. She appeared in my dream. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. Yeah. So that's how I knew she was with me.
Well, maybe this question I'll save for when Dan comes on, but I wonder how far this, I'm sure in that community the experience is really heavy in the little commune. I wonder how much that experience permeates out into the villages.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think after having the experience that I had, especially after the last time that I went back in October, the shamans, whatever they're doing, they are doing something. They're not just sitting there singing songs and icaros.
Okay, what I think, I'm going to put a little curveball in here. If Dan's ready, I think I might bring him on early.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good idea to have you on and Dan, and let's just mix it up and see how it goes.
Let's see.
For everybody, Dan Wagner is a doctor here in the Pittsburgh area. His website is, let's see here if I get it.
I don't have a website, I have a blog.
Okay, well.
AskDrDanWagner.info.
Right, and he's an integrative medicine practitioner in Wildwood. I have known Dan for over 10 years. I've done lectures at his institute, whatever used to be called Nutra Pharmacy. We welcome you aboard. Dan is not a practitioner of ayahuasca, but he should know a good bit about it. And I introduce you with Sandy in the audience. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you again, my friend.
Good to
Thanks.
see
It's
you.
a nice opportunity. But, well, you know, ayahuasca interests me because my real passion in life is medicinal plants. So we have to look at how these things are made. But I will tell you that, you know, every practitioner may have a little bit of a different brew. You know, sort of like we can drink 5 beers and they all taste like beer, but there might be a little bit different ingredients. So Sandy, you said you were in Costa Rica when you had your experience?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, well, Costa Rica, and I've been there many times. I think most of the ingredients I know about come from Ecuador and Peru.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Costa Rica years ago and I met a shaman. We didn't do anything like ayahuasca, but it was quite enlightening. And I remember we were in this big thatched hut. I had a bunch of students with me because I've taken students to the rainforest to learn about medicinal plants and ethnobotany for at least 17 years. But I remember when we came out, somebody was taking a picture, and right before the shaman came out, this big bolt of light came out. So it was really kind of interesting. But I didn't hear much about it in Costa Rica. But anyway, probably being back into the rainforest of the Amazon, I don't know, 50 times or more. I think I've met authentic shamans about 12 times. You know, the most unique situation was when we were in the middle of the rainforest, and I was with Dr. Mark Plotkin, who's quite a well-known ethnobotanist. He's written a famous book called A Shaman's Apprentice, so he knew a lot about it, and I was traveling with him. We also went down to, well, we've been to Ecuador and Peru, but also was in Suriname with him years ago, but that's another story. Anyway, I remember being in this little sort of village out in the middle of the sticks, and Don Antonio Montero, who was kind of the shaman I ran into a couple times, was making a brew. I have a picture of it. So it's like a black pot on top of a fire. Now, the plants that they use there, I thought he said it was like 6 ingredients, but the most famous ones are probably yage. And the one I see a lot is called Angel's Trumpet. It just looks like a white trumpet blowing from a tree. There's some other ones, Cappy, and one's called Natim, but I'm not sure of all of them. Anyway, I just remember what he was saying. Now, he said that he was treating a patient in the village for bad dreams, which could be like depression, but we have to think of depression differently than shamans do. But he takes the medicine with the patient. Mm-hmm. Now, this was not, I have never met one who used it for anything like recreational purposes. Not so. And I think we have to be careful in America. And, you know, these people come up from wherever in Central America, and these college kids who might like to have a little bit of an experience might sit around and do this. I don't know about that, because I'd be careful of that, because I remember the one in Ecuador, Heisler, I think his name was, he said when he takes ayahuasca, he can talk to his grandfather who's been dead for 40 years. He can see through the eagle's eyes, and he can talk to his son 25 miles away. But he said, but if you take too much, you'll be crazy the rest of your life. So I took that to mean like if you overdose, you could have real psychological problems, which was kind of interesting. So I think sitting around talking to these fellows, you know, they all have different experiences, like Sandy said. Some see little men at the edge of the forest. Some see a lot of colors. Now, my only experience is I remember I dipped my finger in one, because again, I was with students most of the time, and I wouldn't take the chance of losing control of myself because I didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, I just basically put it in my mouth, and I didn't vomit or anything, but I thought I saw a lot more like color. My eyes got more colorful and things got a little more colorful, but that was a short-term experience. So treating the people with this is kind of interesting, because remember, if you are a shaman, and these guys are not magical guys, okay? They have all the frailties that you and I have, but they have a gift, just like clairvoyants have a gift. And if they're treating you, they use mostly herbs, and they use soup that they make from herbs. They use a lot of prayer, and of course they'll use plants. So if there's a condition where the shaman is not familiar with it, you know, something like HIV, I guess, or something like that, or strange cancer, they need to go into the forest and wait, get in a Ayahuasca dream, and they have to wait for the plant to speak to them, because the plants will speak to them and say, I'm the right treatment, or something like that. And we can laugh about that, but I'm telling you, it's very authentic. And it's authentic from a number of cases. So I'm walking with Plotkin in the rainforest back from this Ayahuasca ceremony a little bit, but he was only treating a couple of patients then. And they would stay there for a couple of days. You know, he would have them on one of their little beds in the huts and so forth. And Plotkin's walking along, and he gets stung in his arm, right, in his muscle, like by a hornet or some sort of bee or something like that. I'm telling you, in 15 minutes, it was swelling up the size of a golf ball. And here comes Don Antonio, and he looks at it. He says, I'll be right back. So he goes in the forest, gets this branch, breaks it, has a like milky substance to it. And he rubs it on this thing, because Mark's in pain at this point. This thing's pretty painful. He rubs it all over his golf ball size bite that he has on his arm. And I'm telling you, within 15 minutes, like, its swelling's done, the pain's gone, and within a half hour, you couldn't even see the bite anymore.
Wow.
Neosporin just doesn't work that well, does it? So, here you got these experiences, and again, we have to put limits on it. If I was in the middle of the rainforest and I got, I don't know, something like some disease that we can treat in the hospital, appendicitis, fly me to the closest hospital. But if I get a snake bite or a spider bite, take me to the juju man, because these guys will know what to do. So that's authentic. The best example I can think of, if you want to read the best book about shamanism and this type of thing, if you've heard of Dr. Rosita Orvigas, she's probably the best teacher we've ever had down in Belize. And her experience is called Sastun, S-A-S-T-U-N. And it's her apprenticeship with a 10-year relationship with an authentic shaman. Now, this shaman from, I'll tell you some experiences with him too. This is kind of interesting. He died in, I think, 2001 or 2, but he was 103 years old when he died. So Rosita, who's an American who lived down in Belize, her and her husband kind of cleared some forest down there back in the 70s, and they have a little, then they put up a little clinic where they were making rainforest remedies. So it was a great connection. I met with her first time in 1995. I certainly had a big epiphany when I went from pharmacy to natural medicine. And that's another story. But she became a good friend and teacher, so I would take the students down. But her book's about this apprenticeship and the Ayahuasca situations, even though there's probably better books about it. She said that she would spend 10 years with him on and off in the forest. But her most acute experience with the Ayahuasca was about a woman who came from Guatemala City. And her sons brought her in one Friday, but she was possessed by evil spirits. Okay, somebody mentioned that before. A little bit about dark spirits. So I think they use the cigarette smoke, and they use tobacco to kind of clear you of these spirits before they get into some healing aspect. Now, this was interesting because this woman had about 3 years where she basically was a zombie. Why? Because somebody put a hex on her. Now, you and I don't experience what we'd call, what they do in Haiti with the
voodoo.
Voodoo, yeah. They do a little bit in New Orleans. But let me tell you, somebody puts a voodoo hex on you, you got big problems. You got big problems because you're basically like a walking zombie. So anyway, the two sons took her to the best hospitals in Mexico City and Guatemala, no help. So they heard about the shaman. I'll think of his name in a second. Anyway, they bring him in, and on a Friday, because Rosita at that time was, I guess, the apprentice. And his name was Puzo, P-U-Z-O, that's right. Don Elikio Puzzi. Okay, so he's treating her with, he went out and he made some tea for her. Of course, he always prayers first, teas, herbs, and all that stuff. So then she was resting. Saturday night, Sunday, he started doing the Ayahuasca ceremony. And all I remember her saying, and I wasn't there, of course, that Monday morning, this woman vomits the vilest, smelliest, blackest stuff he's ever seen, and she's healed. And that's it. It's just incredible stuff. So the sons are like, oh my gosh, what can we do for you? Well, Iliki would not take money unless you gave it to him, but they gave him something like bread or something like that, or corn or something like that. But and then there's another situation where he's in the middle of the forest with another shaman in Belize, and they're sitting around a campfire doing an ayahuasca ceremony. And the one shaman says to the other, because Rosita was there, and says, I'm going to leave now, but I'll be coming back soon as a jaguar. And like Rosita's like, what the hell are you talking about? I never heard something so stupid in my life. And it's dark. And she says, like 20, 30 minutes later, they're sitting there, and this branch above the fireplace, this black jaguar walks up and walks back down. I'm like, what's the chances of that? So this woman's so authentic. You have to believe her, something like that.
It's like reading Don Juan. It's like reading Don Juan Castaneda.
Yeah. But the frailty of this guy when she writes in his book, and he was a big womanizer. She didn't like that at all, because she would go on his premises and he would be, and he had the problem he had was he had children and he had grandchildren, but see, they were get into religious conversions, the born agains get in these places, and of course they think he's commiserating with the devil, so stay away from the show, stay away from grandpa. So the problem is that he has never learned to read or write, but he has the knowledge in his brain of 10,000 plants. I mean, incredible. But if you don't document, that's something that I worked with. I worked with the American Botanical Council. We go there and try to document these because they don't read or write. So if he dies and doesn't document anything, the library burned down. So Rosita was basically there for that reason, But it's interesting how, he had a stellar reputation from people who would look upon that. But other than that, he was commiserating with the devil, like I said. So, it's kind of an interesting aspect of with this guy. I met him a few times. He was quite old when I met him, so I didn't really talk to him except through an interpreter. But there was an interesting story where the gal from 2020 or 60 Minutes was down there. Diane Sawyer. Okay, back in the 90s. And they video him one of these 20-minute segments, right? And of course, Rosita's interpreting and so forth and about this guy's accomplishments. Well, after they did this, I thought maybe she got some money for it. She goes, oh no, they didn't give us 10 cents. They thought, you're going to get fame from being on American television and all this stuff. So anyway, when I'm down there, a couple years later, they have, VCR, and they show him the actual show because he's never watched television in his life, okay? Not once, this old guy. So, they bring her in, he puts on a VCR, and he says, oh, here's the whole segment from American television. You're all over, you're famous in America. He looks at it and he says, that's amazing. They remember everything I said that day. So interesting. Now, getting back to this aspect of ayahuasca, in a couple of chances that I could have had it, but they said you have to fast for quite a while. So in my interpretation, you have to be kind of spiritually and psychologically ready for this. So one guy said, well, you have to fast for 48 hours. Well, I didn't fast, so I didn't do it in the case that I could have. But, if I went back, you'd have to really trust these people because, this is like being hypnotized. Don't get hypnotized by somebody you don't know because you're completely under their control. And there is the vomiting aspect because Jim Duke, who's one of the most famous herbalists in the country, just passed away last year, but he wrote The Green Pharmacy, which is one of the biggest selling books ever in green medicine. And he's done it a couple of times, but he talked about the vomiting and so forth. And Plotkin's done it a couple of times too. And there's some good books on it. So I think probably we have to think less of this. There's definitely a spiritual aspect to it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think that there's probably an anti-aging possibility to it. But it would be interesting for science to kind of look into it and see how it can maybe develop into treatments for depression, Alzheimer's.
It's coming to America.
They are doing that. Yeah,
we're coming there.
I just don't want them to exploit these people because they do it all the time.
Oh, that's exactly right. Sandy, I wanted to ask you a question. Thank you, Dan. I wanted to ask you, Sandy, when you said you went there to work through some stuff,
yes,
And seeing you on the other end, you have worked through some stuff.
Yes.
How much of that working through happened when you were there versus when you got back?
Well, there's definitely an integration process. They say 50% of the work that you do is with the medicine, and 50% of the work you do is after you get back and integrating that, because you can have the most wonderful experience, but if you don't practice that in your everyday life,
Give me an example of what you're talking about. As an astrologer, I know how I see it, but are you saying during the ayahuasca you become aware of certain patterns? How do you get released from the old stuff?
I think that's the purging. I think that's, the purging. When you purge from your mouth, that's they say that's purging the emotional body. When you're purging from the other side, that's the physical that you're purging. So you purge that's how you're releasing, and how you know it is just the feeling that you have afterwards, and then you integrate that in your life, just not falling back into the same habits, the same patterns, filling your life
because you're just done with it. You're just done with it, right?
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't serve you anymore. Whatever that was, that pattern of thought or habitual pattern that you were in, that was serving some part of you.
Yes. You must have a feeling that something, quote, much bigger than you picked you up and took you to Costa Rica.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Yes. Yes. It wasn't me that took me to Costa Rica. There was something else that took me to Costa Rica. Absolutely. Yes.
Now, Dan, are you finding a lot of people in your realm want to go heading directly towards ayahuasca?
Well, there's a lot of people who write books about that. I think that's possible. I mean, to go down there and do just a ceremony, I think it probably can cost a lot of money. It depends on who does it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, we got back to the exploitation thing. I'm kind of interested in the aspect of the alkaloids that are used in the plants. Now, of course, the biggest thing that they're going to research is this DHT, which you would actually get from LSD. So there's this aspect of how this gets into the psychological aspect. Yeah, the DHT. Now, again, there's going to be different mixtures and all that stuff. But the problem I see is because I've seen it in Belize. So, let's pretend, I can't cure fungal infections from HIV patients. In fact, it's damn difficult. So you go down there, talk to one of these shamans. What do you use for fungal infections? You say, well, we don't use anything. Because why should they give their secrets to some gringo from America who might go back and make all this money, right? So you have to engender their trust. So you go down 7, 8 times, and then they get a feeling for you. But the real problem in the past was the drug companies notoriously went down there. Costa Rica is a great example, where they basically stole the technology. We would call it the same as sort of stealing music from, Billy Joel,
Good on America.
Well, we call it what do we call it? Rights. Can't think of it. Yeah. Parodying to a degree, but intellectual rights. Okay, they have intellectual rights just like everybody else. You're not supposed to steal secrets and so forth. Well, that's what's happened for years. So they can go back, make millions of dollars. 10 cents doesn't go back to the community. So there are some safeguards that have been built over time, especially in Belize. They started a traditional healers association because Rosita was in it, that made sure any money went back to the villages and went back to the schools and kind of stuff like that. Because I'm just telling you, these drug companies are, they're just ruthless for profit. So the Costa Rica experience was so well known. Back in the early 2000s, they made a deal with Costa Rica. Whatever plant medicines they got, mostly for cancer treatment, they were going to split 50-50. They gave them $2 million, and half the research was going to be in Costa Rica universities, half in America. And they had a committee of 5 scientists, because I know one of the guys that was on it, and 5 politicians. Well, in a couple of years, the politicians are bribed off. Everything came to America. These people got nothing. And of course, the drugs that were manufactured, and mostly in Bethesda, Maryland, they go on to make millions. So, Yeah, we got to safeguard it because these people are losing their land big time. They're losing their forests, and if these things burn down or go away, you never know if yage is one of the main ingredients in ayahuasca, and I think it is.
Yes.
The yage that grows down by the river may be the same plant that grows in the middle of the field, but they have different constituents because one has a wet climate and one's a dry one, so they don't work the same in a lab. So we've seen that for years, especially in cancer treatment. So these people know what to pick. They have their but they need their forest, they need their territory. So I don't know. I worry about something like this. I hope they can research it. I don't always trust the scientific community.
Is there any place else other than South America?
No, there's the main countries are Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. They're the main.
Is that right?
Countries. Yeah.
Nowhere in Africa.
Not ayahuasca. I've seen some other things in Africa. In Nigeria, I had a guy who was using certain herbs to treat HIV in early stages and said he would cure people. Well, I don't know about that, but he said something that no American doctor never said that I've ever heard. And he says, oh, by the way, he said, if I don't cure you, you don't have to pay me. Did you ever hear that in America before? That's pretty self-assuring, isn't it?
I know in Africa they do a lot of iboga. Iboga.
Well, it's a big place. I don't know if that's the Congo or whatever. I've been to a couple of countries, but I don't know. But again, the exploitation always worries me because,
as it should.
If your great grandma had this wonderful formula for treating, I don't know, parasites or diarrhea, why would she give it to every Tom, Dick, and Harry? Well, this is what happens, and a lot. And I think that ayahuasca, we have to be careful that it just doesn't have this stigma.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Get high a different way because we can get our spiritual level. And I think it's authentic, but then you can get some charlatans up there. It's just like the whole thing now, everybody's doing CBD, and I think it's wonderful, but there could be a lot of charlatans in the game now. Everybody's bringing out their marijuana equivalent, right? So be careful a little bit.
Elke had the comment for us. Go ahead, Elke.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a healer myself. I studied healing for a long time, and I've also, dabbled in shamanism, so I kind of know what you're talking about. But the issue with the plants is this, that one of my teachers told me each plant has a purpose. And if you're spiritually pure, the plant will work on you. If you need that plant, just like you were saying, Sandy, with Mother Ayahuasca, like if you need it, it will give you what you need. But if you exploit it, like what the drug companies are doing, it won't work because the intention behind it is not to heal and not to cure. It is to exploit. So all they're doing is they're going to turn people into zombies.
Well, let me tell you what happened with me, Elke. When I was forming this session, a woman I read for said to me, I can connect you with a shaman in Peru. Would you like that? I said, sure. She said, she's on Facebook. I said, fine. And I met this lady, and she seemed very nice. And I was planning on just talking to her sometime. Well, she got in her mind, I don't know how, that I was trying to invite her shaman onto my show. And she sent me a message that said, he has told you, unfortunately, that the vine has told him to tell you that unfortunately he cannot be on your show, and he means no offense by that. So it's really interesting how it all comes down to true spirit, and they're really, like you're saying, they're really hearing from the purity of the vine. And like Dan's saying, you can't put this in a package and sell it at Walmart like we talk about. Now, I want to ask Sandy. Sandy, how do you, since you went there and had all this, how do you feel when you're walking in the woods of the USA now?
I just feel life is different no matter where I am.
That's what I want to hear.
And I feel more connected to Mother Nature. I feel more connected to the planet, that we need to really protect the planet. I never thought about it before, but I think the exploitation is absolutely something that we need to work towards. One thing I want to say about working with the plant is that If somebody came to me right now and handed me a glass of ayahuasca, I could not do it. I could not ingest that because it would not do. You can do ayahuasca as a drug, or you can do ayahuasca as medicine. And ayahuasca is not going to work as a medicine unless you have that shaman there to work with the medicine.
Tell us, I read that I saw that on the documentary.
Shamans are doing what they're doing.
Can you explain that to us?
It's, okay, so it is so hard to explain what the shamans do because it's otherworldly. But when you know, at the end of that ceremony, the feeling that you have and the experience that you had, and the shamans are there all night with their energy, and they're just singing their Ikeros, which is the songs that they're singing and the music that they're playing, and how they direct the energy. I don't know what they're doing, but they are doing something, and it's amazing. And you cannot have that same experience just by taking the medicine.
What do you think? What do you think they think of us gringos?
I think they're so. If you are a true shaman and you are, you know, your intention is pure, I think you are so grateful to be able to share that medicine and share that healing with people. So yeah, I think that's what they think. Yeah, I think there are certainly people who are going to exploit different people. We've seen it. We've seen it in documentaries. I think, but if your intention is pure, then you can have a great experience.
What'd you say, Dan?
Well, I'd say most places I've been to, Africa and South America and Central America, they generally like Americans if we come down with the right attitude. You know, we're not trying to be ugly Americans, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I've been asked a couple times, you know, hey, Dr. Dan, we appreciate Americans. They're kind. They come down and help us. They want to learn. What the hell's wrong with your government? I mean, don't blame me. I just live there, man. You know, they're full of shit. So I think it's a problem of how, you know, this exudes from our country, this incredible arrogance, you know. So you got to be really humble because ugly Americans look bad down there. And, you know, you're on their turf.
Yes.
And you have to abide by that. But, you know, I don't think of them as magical people. They have gifts. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's been passed down from generation to generation, mostly oral.
Do you get a sense, Dan, that the Americans really wiped out the whole lot along with the Native Americans?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because this is what's happening today. I mean, look what's happening in Brazil. They're burning down rainforests left and right. I was in, if you know where Suriname is, that's those three little countries between Brazil and like Venezuela. So there's Guyana.
Where Johnstown.
Yeah, right there. So right south of that is Suriname. Suriname is probably the size of Nevada. It has like 98% rainforest. You go into Paramaribo, I was flying down there, but we took a small plane down to the border of Brazil and southern Suriname. So these people had, I mean, I lived there for a week and there's no electricity. You just slept in a hammock, you bathed in the stream and so forth. You know, they never saw a Westerner or a white man until about 1950s, and it was a missionary. And Mark Black can't stand missionaries anymore because, you know, they basically, and again, it's just the way it is, you know, they start prophesizing their own way of thinking, and people look and say, well, gee, I got more clothing. I mean, I saw these guys with Michael Jordan shirts, you know, and they never had things like that before, and they get money, so they leave that. And of course, they start to believe that these old people have this connection with nature, but they think it's a connection with the devil because that's what they're taught. It's big problems. I think it's problems all over the place.
Barbara,
I remember being in the middle, you know, a storm coming up, and we were kind of sitting around a fire, and they were singing, and the kids were singing mostly like Christian songs in their own language. But this is really interesting. This is probably one of the only 4 or 5 places left where the guys came out of the forest, and I'm telling you, they had loincloths on. They looked like they were Neanderthals, and they were shooting bows and arrows with.
Yeah, I've read about that.
You know, so they would shoot the monkey with the tip of the arrow, which has
right.
curare on it, you know, which is like a spin poison. But there are people still like that. I don't know how many took that, but it was a great experience from that standpoint. But, you know, I think different countries down there, different areas use different plants, but I think there's probably a couple that are in the mix.
Barb,
I don't think it's in the United States.
Barbara asked, do people ever die in these ceremonies?
Well, if you're under the auspices of a shaman, I don't think that ever happens. I think some people just get really sick. But, you know, it's your own spiritual intention sometimes. You can be in a real bad state and have a really bad trip, so to speak. But if you're open to more of the supra and the consciousness aspect, which I think is the main thing to that, because, you know, most people believe, I believe that I'm a spiritual creature having a human experience. I'm not a human having a spiritual experience. So it's sort of that, and you connect with that, and it just opens up a whole vista of possibilities in your consciousness. And, you know, probably only, 2 or 3% of our everyday life is really, you know, 97% is still unconscious. It's hard to connect with that in the American society.
Sandy, what do you tell people that are interested in going? What do you tell them?
I have a couple connections, but I don't know this one guy, I don't think I could get a hold of him, but
no, I was asking Sandy.
Okay.
Sandy, what would you tell people who, I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. What would you tell people who are interested in going?
I think if you're interested in going, if it's something you're called to do, and you'll know if you're called to do it, it can be an absolute phenomenal experience. Just go with, you know, an open heart and an open mind, and trust. That was one of the biggest lessons that I got from Mother Ayahuasca, is to trust the medicine.
Well, I'll tell you what, with this next question coming, if you've not heard of a man called Terrence McKenna.
Yes, of course I have.
He's an absolute walking genius. I think he passed away, didn't he?
I think he
is all over a lot of books, but he is all over. Here's a Scorpio, brilliant. He's all over YouTube with tremendous knowledge about DMT itself.
Yes.
So he knows about ayahuasca, and I think that you've got to be really careful when you're picking up different books and different videos. But it seems to me that the report you've given us tonight is such a nice report, because it's very sane, and it sounds to me like you were very lucky that you got in with a nice group of people with the right intentions. What was the size of your group?
There were probably, the first time I went, I think there were probably about 70 people.
Really?
Yes. And that was a concern of mine. I thought, there's so many people here. How can these shamans take care of all of these people? But when I went there, I never felt unsafe. I never felt like if I needed them, they weren't there for me. The second time there were even more, because I guess there's a shaman hierarchy. So the next time I went, it was he's called the Taita. He's the shaman, and there were even more people there. And never once did I feel like I was unsafe or there were too many people.
So what did Mother Ayahuasca do for you?
So Mother Ayahuasca,
what did she do for you?
Gave me more of a sense of peace. It's okay. I don't have to work so hard. Life is supposed to be fun. Just less worry, more calm is what she gave me. And another thing is, what I went there to work on was issues with my mother, and I was able to work through that, which was a beautiful, beautiful experience. It wasn't all in the first trip. A majority of that, the most profound thing came the second time that I went, but it was kind of like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense. And I was able to have compassion.
So you went a second time for 7 days? 7 days?
Yes.
Does it drive you to where you want to go back again?
I will, when the first time that I went, I had the intention, I'm going one time, I'm just going to do this once. And then I end up going the second time, and I thought, well, this is just another time. I'm not going to do this again. And while I was there, I was kind of meditating and thinking about, my intention for being there. And I was thinking about this journey that I started. I want to continue this journey that I started. And it kind of came to me that I don't know when this healing or this teaching is going to end. It's not up to me. I can't decide that right now. I don't know that. So I can't put that limit on there. So if I feel called to do it again, which I hope I do, it's a beautiful experience, I will absolutely do it. When the time is right, I know I'll do it again, for sure, if it's meant to be. And that's another thing that's done. It's taken off a lot of the pressure. Like, I got to do this, I got to do that. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Just a lot more calm.
So what these stories leave with you, Dan? When you hear her story, how does it make you feel about everything?
You know, she mentioned about the different levels. I guess so. I mean, if you go into Belize, Guatemala, you have the curanderos, you have the midwives, you have the bushmasters, and you know they're all pretty astute when it comes to plant medicines. But the shaman that would basically heal your body and your spirit would in that area would be called the doctor priest. Okay, so they have a big connection with Catholicism, but they also have their connection with the Maya traditions. So they blend them quite nicely. But so this guy Don Eligio was certainly a doctor priest. It was considered. I think what we can take from this is that if we recognize this, the value of this, then we have to protect the rainforest more. We have to protect these indigenous people. I mean, it's sort of not logical to think that we're going to keep these people away from American, values. I mean, they all like our money. They all want to be tour guides. They all like our clothing. They all like our music. Why the hell would I want to be 15 years an apprentice for a shaman who won't make any money? So it's very difficult for the kids and the grandkids to do that today. So again, we're standing on the precipice, and we're going to lose this knowledge in a very short period of time if we don't protect them. So the best shamans, if you read Plotkin's book, so you can go into some place like Venezuela, Colombia. Mostly, if you go into the coast, a lot of the African slaves that broke away and didn't come into our country, the ships went awry and they went into Central America, South America. Well, these Africans, mostly from West Africa, they went into the forest and they started their own villages. I've been in these villages and I thought I was in Africa, Nigeria, but I was in Suriname. So the story is with Plotkin that there was a guy with incurable cancer. So he goes to the local African village, and in fact, he was like the son of the mayor or something like that in the town. So he was an important kid. So he goes in and they said, well, we don't know what to do. So let's go to the shaman down there in southern Suriname, where I was. And basically says what he would do, but he says, if you really want the best ones, you got to go to Colombia. So that's a little deeper into the forest. So southern Colombia is pretty remote yet. So there's some remote tribes there. So I think this Plotkin, who works with an organization called Rainforest Fund, I mean, he's trying to kind of get governments to protect thousands and millions of acres of rainforest. Because believe me, these people today, they don't want to be an apprentice. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fasting. You got to fast from sex. You got to fast from food. You got to follow the shaman for 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's pretty tough today, especially if you can get on the internet and see what's going on in the world. So, it is going to be a lost art. I don't know what's going to come from this in America. I hope we don't get it as a recreational thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I hope you're right too. I want to take the last few minutes here, open it up to everybody. If you'd like to unmute yourself, have any question for either Sandy or Dr. Dan Wagner, then just raise your hand and I'll take care of it. If you have a question for Sandy or Suzanne, go ahead, dear.
Oh, hi, Rick. Hi, Sandy and Dr. Wagner. I'm happy to be here listening to everyone. I have a question. I asked on the chat what part of the brain this medicine works on. And I guessed it may have been the pineal gland, and Sandy answered, yeah, it's probably the pineal gland. The reason I'm asking is I have left brain trauma. And so how does that work when somebody doesn't have a normal brain?
Well, I don't think it's the pineal gland as much.
Mother, Scott, how do you pronounce that word again? Will Mother A know that you have brain damage?
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, thank you.
Will she know it? My hunch is
Yeah,
she
I mean,
will. What do you think, Sandy?
I think Mother Ayahuasca will know it. And again, I think you get what you need. So I think Mother Ayahuasca can work within whatever you have to offer her, whatever you're coming to her with. I think she can absolutely work with you and give you what you need. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking that as well, I'm pretty much organically right-brained. So I've had like, my whole life has been that a trip like that. Literally. I'm not schizophrenic, but you know, I earned the Allegheny County Employee of the Year last year, so I do quite well in the real world. But yeah, I mean, I guess if I did go down there and try it, the shaman would probably recognize some weirdness about me and give me a lower dose or something, because I certainly don't want to have the type of brain where you give a normal dose and it just shoots me off to Mars or something.
She may.
So I'm already in a heightened state of awareness, is what I'm saying.
I think that you would have that conversation with them, and they would know what, you know, how to help you. Yeah, because that would definitely be a conversation that you would have with them. Because if you have any concerns, whatever it is, you can talk with them about whatever that is, and they will help you in whatever way that you need to be helped. And the medicine.
Do you have to sign release forms?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Don't ask me what they say, because I just signed. I didn't read anything. I just signed it.
Well, I have been to a medicine ceremony. William from Rosebud came in and did a peyote ceremony, and I think 50% of the people were white people. He told us he had to reduce the amount because we were all white.
Anybody else with questions?
Well, I think I'm going to answer that too. I think the pineal gland is certainly the connection between our physical and our spiritual, sort of a bridge, but mostly that's going to be dealing with serotonin and melatonin. The real issue with studying ayahuasca would be with the hippocampus, which is the memory part of the brain. That's why it might be used in something like Alzheimer's and dementia as time goes on. So the neurons in the memory part is probably where it's affecting the most.
Come on, Angel. Angel, I know you got a question. What is it?
I'm fascinated by all of this.
Well, he's talking about all these people with different issues. This must generate some questions in your mind.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Are you from Puerto Rico?
Yes, I'm from Puerto Rico. My question are there any movements where we could do that here in Pittsburgh?
In Puerto Rico?
No, in Pittsburgh.
Oh, and I know there are some shamans who do some ceremonies in the United States. It's becoming more popular. You just really have to do your research, because you don't want to be in New York City in somebody's loft doing this. You want to make sure you're in a reputable, with a reputable shaman, drinking reputable medicine, just like I said, doing your research, knowing what you're doing. So you can find places that will do it in the United States. You just have to be careful and make sure you're doing it with the right people.
Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Miss Jordan? Any questions in your mind?
No, I'm just sitting here pondering the I don't want to use the word utility, the appropriateness of using this if a person intuits that the body and the spirit aren't working together as they should. I'm not talking necessarily about ill health. I'm just, I don't know if it makes any sense to say that.
If you feel guided to do it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's something I'm struggling with right now, feeling like I'm not doing the right things for my body, but it's because I'm not spiritually right where I need to be right now.
Well, it's no coincidence that all of you are selected to hear a talk about ayahuasca tonight. No. Sarah, go ahead. You had a question.
Is for Sandy. I'm just wondering where in Costa Rica, which center it was, and the cost for her, cost for you, Sandy, to be there for 7 days.
So the place that I went to in Costa Rica is called Rhythmia, Rhythmia, and you can research Rhythmia online. Gerald Powell is the owner, and he had an incredible experience. If you listen to his journey and how he came to open up Rhythmia, it's quite an interesting story. You can go to Peru, you can go to Colombia and in the jungles and do this. When you go to Rhythmia, that's as close to a 5-star resort as you're going to get. Again, you have massages, you have colonics, you have they have yoga, they have dancing, all of your food is included, and they have different packages. You can have 3 people in a room, you can have 2 people in a room, or you can have a room by yourself. I chose to be with another person, and that was the best thing for me because I made a lifelong friend.
Yeah, your flight is separate?
The flight is separate, correct. So the flight was probably, I think the second time I went down, it was about $500. The first time, I think it was about $6 or $7. And the resort cost was, I think, around $4,000 to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a beaut, and I got to tell you, like, you have no idea what you're getting into when you go there, but from the people who pick you up at the airport, to the people who check you in, to the people who clean your room, you know, so the people who are working at the resort there, and all the helpers, they have a lot of people who work there that are helping out. It is nothing but pure love at this place. Like,
beautiful. Thank you.
Nothing that you've ever experienced before. It is a very beautiful place. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. Anybody else with a final question? Yes, Marcia, you're on.
I'd just like to say a comment. What I really liked, Sandy, what you said, and it really echoed in me, is the connection of the ayahuasca with the shaman.
Yes.
And how that connection, it seems to me, is the most important aspect for the healing and the opening.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, if somebody came to me right now and said, "Here's some ayahuasca, would you like it?" No, because it has to be in the right setting, or it's not going to be the same thing. And then it becomes a drug as opposed to medicine. And my intention is to work with medicine, not just to do a drug.
Okay, we have a final question, and we're done. And wrapping it up with, is Erica? Where are you, Erica? There you are. You're on.
Hi, Sandy. I guess maybe you and Dr. Wagner would both know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering, not as far as somebody, you know, having a mental health issue or anything like that, but what if somebody came down with the flu or some other sort of thing? How do they deal with that over there? Or touristas, you know?
Or what?
Touristas, you know, dysentery.
Oh, well, you're going to have dysentery no matter what.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're going to be purging.
Wow, okay. That makes it busy by itself.
But the purging is a good thing, because the purging is, that's what's releasing what you need to release. And it's you know, it's interesting, because I had somebody else say this to me, and I had the same experience. I had somebody say they had heard somebody, and it's not just you're just not throwing up. It's a retching. It's a guttural retching.
Watch the documentary. Watch it. You'll see it.
It's profound. So she said she heard this person retching, and she said, "Hold on," to herself. She's like, "Buddy, I'm going to take this for you." And she threw up for him. I had the same experience on the other end when I was there. I was trying to throw up and I couldn't. And I heard, it was just crazy, because I was like, I was in an echo chamber, and there was somebody else there throwing up for me. And you can't, like, this is undescribable. So
well, that gives me another thought, and that is, what about I mean, all of that retching, what about being dehydrated? Because that's what happens to you if you throw up a lot. What do they do for dehydration?
So you don't,
It's all going to take care of itself.
you don't want to drink while you're in the ceremony because that can lessen the effect, but you definitely want to take care of yourself, you know, outside of the ceremony. You want to be drinking enough water. You want to be eating the right foods to nourish your body and to be able to do that. Because you're right.
The point I'm hearing of all this is it's the main thing about this is surrendering. Don't worry about
exactly,
it. Surrender. And if you listen to the story, that Liza went to Barcelona, Spain, and she went through the holotropic breath work, which is very intense, heavy breathing for days and days. They get to the same type of place where your body knows what to release. Go ahead, Sandy.
One thing at Rhythmia, where I was, they also do transformative breath work also. That's another thing.
Yeah, it's all similar, and I'm gonna have different shows on different things. But I really thank you for tonight, because I think tonight was excellent, because we're getting into some new territory. It's very exciting. Yeah. We're getting away from this. Well, what's your 5-year plan for your career, sir? We're getting away from that stuff. Thank God. Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you.
I'll call you Doc Wagner. I really appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much, Sandy. And we hope to have you on again. I thought it was just fascinating. We really appreciate it. We're all telling the same story. We're chipping away at different parts of the mountain. Tomorrow, this will be uploaded onto YouTube for you. And thank you all. And if you want to join us live anytime, Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, just type into Google Astrology Unplugged. So thank you once again. Have a good week, and love to all of you.
Thank you, Rick, so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.